All right, so we are diving into something pretty interesting today. It all started in France, but it's making its way over here to the U.S.
Yeah, we're talking about a graphic novel about climate change and energy, and it's become a huge bestseller.
Okay, a graphic novel about climate change? I mean, that sounds maybe a little dry, but obviously it's caught on.
It really has, and we are going to look at an interview with the climate and energy expert behind the book, 장-Ma르크 장kovici.
Okay.
The book is called World Without End.
Okay.
And it was originally published in French as Le Monde Sans Fin.
Okay.
And he worked with the graphic novelist Christophe Blaine on this project.
Cool. And so this is for, for you listeners out there. This is really for you if you like to understand these complex issues quickly. And, without kind of getting bogged down, feeling like you are just reading a textbook. We're going to try to make this a little more lively, give you kind of a different perspective on how to understand, climate change communication and this whole, change that we're undergoing trying to transition away from fossil fuels.
Right.
And
I think this book does a great job of kind of crystallizing the challenges there in a really compelling way.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that it's caught on so much in France.
Yeah.
And so we're going to try to unpack a little bit about why that is, and then also think about, well, okay, what is the potential impact of this book now that it's come over here to the U.S.?
Right.
Okay, so who is this guy? 장-Ma르크 장kovici, the person behind all of this.
Well, he's got a really interesting background. I mean, he started out as an engineer.
Okay.
And then he really kind of transitioned into looking at the complexities of climate and energy issues.
Okay.
And one of the things that's really striking about him is how he became so influential in France. It wasn't through like the traditional academic route or anything like that. It was actually largely through his online lectures.
Okay.
And these videos, believe it or not, they went viral.
A climate and energy expert, kind of a viral sensation. I mean, that's not usually how these things go.
Not usually. No, not usually. But he really struck a chord with people. And what's interesting is his work has had a really concrete impact. It's not just theoretical.
Right.
He actually developed a carbon accounting system that is now used by companies all across Europe to really understand their greenhouse gas emissions and figure out how to manage them.
And what does that mean? Like, what is a carbon accounting system?
Basically, it's a way for companies to see, across all their different operations, where their emissions are coming from.
Oh, okay.
So it gives them like a real clear breakdown, and then they can use that information to develop strategies to reduce those emissions.
Okay, that makes sense.
So he's coming at this from a very practical, hands-on perspective. It's not just all theory.
Right. So how does this guy end up collaborating with a graphic novelist? I mean, it's a strange pairing.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So Christophe Blaine, who was already a pretty well-known graphic novelist in France, he happened to see some of Jankovici's online lectures.
Okay.
And he was, really struck by Jankovici's ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so he reached out to him and they started talking. And eventually they decided to, collaborate on this book.
That's pretty cool. And the book's content, I understand it's actually based on something that he was already teaching.
That's right. So Jankovici was teaching a course on energy and climate change at an engineering school. And the book really follows, the structure and the key arguments from that course.
Wow.
So, it's got a very solid foundation in well thought out information.
So what's the big picture? Like, what's the first argument that this book makes? Like, what are they trying to get across to the reader?
Well, the first part of the book really tries to explain why we, as a society, why we're so attached to fossil fuels.
Right.
Why we depend on them so much.
Hey.
And Jankovici uses this really powerful analogy to help explain this. He talks about our machines, the machines that are powered by fossil fuels.
Yeah.
He describes them as giving us, quote, superpowers.
Superpowers. Oh, okay. I mean, I guess I can see how he might get there, but what does he mean?
I mean, think about it. These machines, they allow us to do things that would be impossible without them,
Okay.
We can move huge amounts of Earth. We can travel across continents in just a few hours.
Right.
And we can produce goods on a scale that, would have been unimaginable just a few centuries ago.
Right.
These machines, they power everything from agriculture and manufacturing to, heating our homes, transporting all the stuff that we buy. I mean, it's all powered by these machines that run on fossil fuels.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's clear.
And so the book argues that these superpowers, right, these abilities that we've gained through fossil fuels, they've really shaped the way we live today, in profound ways.
So it's not just that we need to switch to cleaner energy. It's that, like, our whole society is kind of built on fossil fuels.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. It's not just about swapping one type of fuel for another. It's much deeper than that, right?
Okay.
Jankovic is saying that fossil fuels aren't just interchangeable with other energy sources. They're woven into the fabric of our modern world,
Yeah, right.
And that's a big reason why this transition is so complex,
Right.
It's not just a technical problem, it's a societal problem.
Okay, so how does the book go about, what are some of the misunderstandings that it tries to address about all of this?
Well, one of the first things Jankovic tries to do is to clear up some of the common misconceptions about fossil fuels and climate change.
Okay.
Like, one of the biggest misunderstandings, he says, is this idea that fossil fuels are just one type of energy among many.
Okay.
As if we could just easily switch to something else and everything would be fine.
Right.
But the book, it really pushes back against that idea.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that fossil fuels, they're not just like a replaceable part in the machine. They're the foundation of the whole thing.
Okay.
And another big misconception that he tackles is the idea that nuclear energy is just inherently too dangerous, right? That it's just too risky.
Okay.
But Jankovic, based on his background in physics and his research, he presents a different perspective.
Okay.
He argues that nuclear energy is actually a very low carbon source of electricity.
I mean, I understand the argument, but obviously, people think about Chernobyl, they think about Fukushima.
Right, and he acknowledges those events. He doesn't shy away from them.
Okay.
But he points out that, if you actually look at the data, the number of deaths directly caused by radiation from those accidents is surprisingly low.
Really?
Yeah. And then he kind of puts those risks into perspective by comparing them to the risks of other things that we do every day, like driving a car or even just like falling down the stairs at home. So his point is not to say that nuclear energy is risk-free, but to say that the risks are often overblown,
Okay.
and that we need to weigh those risks against the risks of climate change,
Right.
which are, potentially much greater.
Right. Okay. So what about renewables, like solar and wind? I mean, where do those fit into his argument?
So Jankovic, he's not against renewable energy at all.
Okay.
In fact, he acknowledges that they have a lot of advantages.
Right.
But he also points out that they have limitations,
Okay.
And his argument is that renewable energy alone, at least with the technology that we have today and at the scale that we're currently deploying it, it's just not going to be enough to power our entire society,
Okay.
As it exists now.
So he's not saying that we shouldn't be investing in renewables.
No, not at all.
Okay.
He just thinks that we need to be realistic about what they can and can't do.
Okay.
And he thinks that sometimes the public conversation about renewable energy, it can get a little bit too optimistic, Like it can overemphasize the potential of renewables while kind of downplaying the challenges. Like the fact that they're intermittent, they don't always produce power when we need it.
Right. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow.
Exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, what's his solution then? If he doesn't think that we can just switch to renewables and he's got these concerns about nuclear, what's the answer?
Well, his main point is that there's no silver bullet, There's no one solution that's going to solve all of our problems.
Okay.
He thinks that we need to use a combination of different approaches,
Okay.
Including renewables, nuclear, and probably some other things that we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay.
And he also thinks that we need to be prepared to make some changes to our lifestyles, Like we might need to consume less energy overall, or we might need to change the way we use energy.
Right.
But his point is that we need to start thinking about these things now, before it's too late.
Okay, so this all sounds, I mean, it's very realistic. It's kind of maybe even a little bit pessimistic or, not quite as optimistic as some of the things that we hear.
Right.
But, I mean, this book has sold over 1 million copies in France.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, why do you think that is? Why do you think this book has resonated so much with people?
I think it's because of that honesty.
Okay.
He's not sugarcoating things. He's not pretending that this is going to be easy.
Right.
He's being very upfront about the challenges that we face.
Okay.
And I think people appreciate that,
Yeah.
They're tired of being told that everything is going to be fine if we just switch to solar panels.
Right.
They want someone to be honest with them about the scale of the problem and the difficulty of the solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very refreshing to hear someone just kind of, lay it all out there, warts and all, so to speak. So, I mean, the interview also talks about, some of the global political changes that have happened, things like the U.S. pulling out of the Paris Agreement, What's his take on all of that?
Well, his perspective on that is, it's really interesting. He's very focused on Europe's position in all this.
Okay.
And he argues that regardless of what other countries do, Europe has a selfish interest in leading the way in this transition away from fossil fuels.
A selfish interest. What does he mean by that?
Well, he has a couple of reasons for saying this. First of all, he points out that fossil fuels are finite resources, right? Eventually, we're going to run out of them.
Yeah.
So the sooner we start transitioning away from them, the better off we'll be.
Okay.
And secondly, he thinks that Europe can actually gain a strategic advantage by being a leader in this transition.
Okay.
He believes that humans are, and I'm quoting him here, mimetic animals, meaning that we tend to imitate each other. So if Europe can show the rest of the world that it's possible to have a prosperous society that's not based on fossil fuels, then other countries are more likely to follow suit.
Okay.
So it's not just about like altruism or saving the planet. It's also about self-preservation and, maybe even a little bit of economic competition.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective.
So, I mean, this book, World Without End, it's just been published here in the U.S., right?
That's right. It came out on March 11th.
Wow.
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see how it's received here.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of wrap up here, I mean, this book, it's a graphic novel, which is kind of a unique approach.
Yeah.
But it really gets into, the nitty-gritty of our relationship with energy, particularly fossil fuels, and just how challenging it's going to be to address climate change.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I found really interesting is that it doesn't pull any punches. It's very direct, and it's very honest about the difficulties that we're going to face.
Yeah, it's not afraid to challenge some of the, more conventional wisdom.
Right, and I think that that's why it's been so successful in France, People are looking for something that's real, that's grounded in the realities of the situation.
Right.
And so now it's here in the U.S., and it'll be really interesting to see, what kind of impact it has here.
Yeah, I think for those of you listening who are really interested in understanding these issues and you want to get, a quick grasp of some of the complexities and you want to get a different perspective, I mean, I really think this book is a great place to start.
It's definitely a unique approach, and I think it'll be interesting to see if it can, spark some new conversations here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we haven't really talked about is, the power of visual storytelling. And, I mean, I'm not a huge comic book reader or a graphic novel reader or anything like that, but, there's something about the combination of the words and the images that really can, bring these issues to life in a way that maybe just reading a regular book or an article can't.
Yeah, it makes it much more accessible for a wider audience, too.
Right.
People who might not necessarily pick up like a dense policy report.
Right.
They might be drawn into a graphic novel.
Right.
And then, they start to learn about these issues in a way that's engaging and maybe even entertaining.
Right. So I guess the question is, can a graphic novel, gets it really change public opinion on something as complex and as contentious as climate change?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, we've seen that it's had an impact in France.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think, the fact that it's being published here in the U.S. suggests that there are people who believe that it could have an impact here as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it for today. This is definitely something to think about, and we'll keep an eye on this book as it, kind of makes its way through, the U.S. and see what kind of impact it has.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.